So you've got your tiles installed and it comes down to that age-old question, should I use cement-based grout or epoxy grout? Well, today I'm going to look at the pros and cons of both and put them to the test to help you decide which is best for your tiling project. Stick around until the end because you might be surprised by the results. Plus I'll be showcasing a new product which could be a game changer for applying epoxy grout, but more on that in a bit. Let's jump into it. So I've prepared 2 strips of porcelain tile stuck to a 6mm backerboard. On the right I'll grout the joint with a normal cement grout, and on the left I'll use the epoxy grout. Here are the 2 products I'll be using. For the cement grout I'll be using Kirikol Fugabella, my go-to flexible cement grout for porcelain. It's a hybrid grout with a resin additive. Cement grouts come in a powder form and are mixed with water to achieve the right consistency. They're flexible, water resistant and offer long lasting aesthetic and mechanical performance. They're also suitable for wet rooms and underfloor heating and most tiling applications. For the epoxy grout I'm using the GOPOXY system, which simplifies epoxy grout application compared to the traditional method using a grout float and a sponge. Epoxy grouts consist of resin and a hardener, making them highly durable, waterproof and non-porous. This makes them easy to clean and highly resistant to stains and chemicals. They are the standard for hygienic areas like restaurants and hospitals. To start the test I mix up the cement grout, work it into the joints with a grout float and remove the excess. I'll leave a piece of both grouts at the top to examine later. Once it starts to dry I give it a quick wash with the sponge to clean it up and smooth the joint. Now we let it dry. For the epoxy, the GOPOXY system uses a gun and a nozzle like sealant, mixing the 2 compounds as they are dispensed. Before applying I wax both edges of the joint so that the excess grout can be easily removed once dry, saving time compared to taping or washing off epoxy grout. I squeeze a bead of epoxy down the joint, then use the appropriate tool to shape it. It takes about 3 to 12 hours to dry depending on temperature, so now I leave both joints overnight. It's the next day now and you can see even though this is a grainy tile, the wax does its job and the excess is easy to remove. And after a few scrapes leaves you with a nice joint. So that's our 2 grouts applied, now let's put them to the test. As expected, when taking a blade to the grouts, the cement grout is more susceptible to scratching and scraping compared to its resin counterpart. Both are tough, but the epoxy grout is denser, more rigid and more hard wearing. And as you can see was pretty hard to remove from the backerboard. Here the cement grout is flaking off where it isn't as solid. Now this is the big one I think catches most people's faults when choosing a grout. How well does the colour hold up against everyday stains and spills? And to make it interesting, I'm going to go from light to extreme. So we have some body wash, a can of cola, some red wine and some WD oil. Now the epoxy grout with the qualities it has should win this hands down, but let's see. Okay, so starting with the body wash first on both the joints. And I'll mark everything on the side here so we know what's what and I can keep score later. Also, I'll leave the products to soak in for a bit before washing off. So that's the Coca-Cola going on. Then in with the ever so punishing red wine. We all know how brutal this stain is to get out of things and I don't hold much hope for the cement grout here. But let's see. And lastly, here's the WD oil to top it off as why not. So I'll just let them soak in for a couple of minutes, then give them a wash and see what they look like. And you can see how punishing that red wine and oil is seeping into the grout already. So wiping with a sponge and water, you can see the porous grout joint will take a bit of time to dry, compared to the epoxy where it just wipes off the surface. This again is to be expected with the nature of a resin material. Once the cement grout dries, we can take a proper look. So off with the red wine and off with the oil. What is coming apparent already is all these products don't even make a dent in the colour of the epoxy grout. So that is good, it's doing what it's supposed to do. With the cement grout we have to let it dry for a bit to see what the damage is. After 10 minutes the body wash has cleared up fine, which is great and what you'd expect. But the wine and the Coke are leaving some dark stains and the oil doesn't look like it'll ever come out. So let's do a little checklist of how they both performed with each product. Both grouts easily dealt with the everyday washing soap. No signs of cola on the epoxy, but the cement grout still has the slightest staining. Again here the left is clean, but the red wine is clearly stained on the cement grout. And let's not even talk about the oil. As I'm feeling a little bit sorry for the cement grout and the cola isn't that bad, I'm going to go back and give it half a mark. But still an all-round win for the epoxy grout there. And at this point you're probably thinking the epoxy grout is far more superior and this is a non-contest. So I'm just going to have one more go at putting the 2 worst offenders, red wine and oil, at the bottom here. So at first all seems the same, it wipes off the epoxy easy and the cement grout looks stained. But after 5 minutes you can actually see it starting to dry back to colour. And after 10 minutes it pretty much looks untouched. You may ask, why has it done that down here and not on the test at the top? Well, if I zoom out here, you'll see the difference is I actually applied an impregnating sealer on this bottom part over the grout joint. You can see the difference this makes, repelling the two worst stain offenders, oil and red wine. So this brings the cement grout back into the game. When a sealer is applied to the grout, it completely bolsters its protection, not only against everyday stains, but against the worst offenders. Now, the reason I stuck the tiles to a 6mm backboard is so I can bend it to simulate stress on the grout joints. While not a scientific test, by bending this board I am putting quite a bit of stress on the tile joints. It gives us an idea of their flexibility, and checking both the grouts after that little workout, both the joints look fine and no signs of immediate cracking. Cement grout is generally more flexible and epoxy grout is stiffer but bonds better to the surface, so they trade off against each other a bit there. Both have additives to minimise shrinkage and cracking under normal conditions. So which one should you choose? I'd say it all depends on the situation and cost. Epoxy grout is more expensive and can be tricky to apply, but the GOPOXY system now simplifies that, especially for DIYers. As we know, it's highly durable, waterproof, stain resistant and hygienic, so perfect for kitchens and wet areas. However, proper application is critical to avoid any pinholes where water can seep in underneath. Cement grout is quicker and easier to apply, drying in the same day. While it's only water resistant, not waterproof, it allows trapped moisture to evaporate, unlike with epoxy grout, reducing the risk of a vapour pressure lifting a tile. Also, adding a sealer significantly improves its stain resistance, making it a practical choice for many applications. For me, cement-based resin grout remains my go-to, but with the GOPOXY system, I can see myself using epoxy grout more often, especially for large format tiles. In this bathroom, I use both. Cement grout on the mosaics and main walls, and epoxy with its strength for the miters. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments and I'll catch you in the next one.